Hey, today I'll be showing you some techniques to comp a traditional Irish reel, the Merry Blacksmith. So shout out to Jim O'Shea who requested this video. And to start with, I'll just play the melody so you can get an idea of the tune. And you can come back and play along with this later to try out some of the comping ideas that I'll go into. So for the accompaniment, we'll start very simple and gradually introduce some more complex options, which is often how your accompaniment will develop anyway when you're playing a traditional tune. And the simplest way to accompany a tune, especially if you don't know the tune or don't know what the melody player is going to play, is with just a drone on one or two notes. And this is also probably the most traditional kind of accompaniment because it's the way that instruments like the bagpipe accompany themselves with their drone notes. It's also why open tunings like dadgad on guitar or the GD8D tuning on bouzouki work so well, because we have these open strings tuned already to D, a D chord, which is what a lot of the Irish tunes are in, and this tune is no exception. So we're playing in D major, and we'll start off with just a drone. And what can be nice is to use a high drone on your top two strings when you first start playing the tune, and then bring in the bass for a bit of a kick, often at maybe the start of the B part. So if I was at a session playing this tune, I would probably leave the first sort of half of the A part to listen, hear what the melody player is playing, and let them kind of get into their groove and get an idea of the kind of swing they're giving to the tune. And then maybe the second half of the A part, I'd come in on a drone, just on the two top strings, like I said, and then bring in the bass later. So that might sound something like this. So now we'll start looking at chords, and often your best place to start when you're playing a traditional folk tune is with your 1, 4 and 5 chords. And if you don't know what I'm talking about here, you should check out this video where I go into the theory of chords that are used in folk music. But in this case, our 1, 4 and 5 chords are D, G and A. So to decide which chords we should play, we should look at what's happening in the melody and what chords are being kind of suggested by this. So we look at the first line of the melody. So the main notes there are kind of this. Which is a D major chord. And this is probably to be expected because normally you'll start with your tonic chord in any tune, and this is a D major tune. So we play the D major chord. The next line's almost exactly the same. So we'll keep our D major chord there. And then the next line, your main notes there are, which is still a D major chord. So we'll roll with the D major chord there as well. The next section, we have here a B and E. So that actually suggests an E minor chord, as this is the only chord that has both of those notes. But in this case, because we're trying to stick with the 1, 4, 5, we'll go for a G chord, which is closely related to E minor. And then for this last section, we'll swap to an A chord, which will then lead us back to the D when we come back around to the start of the kind of melodic line. So you mainly want to use the A chord as a kind of leading chord to get back to a D. It's the main function of your 5 chord in both folk music and many other genres such as classical and pop. And then the next part of the melody is almost the same, but we don't have that little E minor line. So this time we will go straight to the A chord and then resolve onto the D at the same time as the melody at the end of the melody line. Something like that. So to try all that together, it will sound something like this. For the B part, you can do the exact same thing because the end of each phrase is the same, and that first phrase is focused again around the D major chord. And something else you could do to break up the monotony of those several bars of D major chord is add a bit of melodic movement, so changing the notes you're playing without changing the chord. So in this case, I might play the D chord, and then just before the change to the G, I'll add in an F sharp to add this melodic movement. And the second time will be... So let's see how that sounds with the tune. So now that we have our basic 1-4-5 progression, we can start looking at places to do chord substitutions. So this is where we take one of our chords and replace it with a closely related chord that shares some notes. And so the most usual way to do this is to move down 2 notes from the chord. So if we start with our D chord, we can move down to B minor, and B minor shares this D and F sharp from the D chord. So this is called the relative minor of the D major chord, and this is probably the most common substitution you'll see in Irish folk music, especially when you have a tune like this that has repeated phrases. So often you'll see the B minor chord coming out in the second half of the B part, replacing that D major. And that works really well in this tune as well. So this is what that would sound like. So now let's go back to the A part and see if we can work in any chord substitutions there. So we probably want to start with the D chord to stay on the tonic. But then the next chord that was a D, we can try substituting again by moving down 2 notes to a B minor. And for the next section, we can try substituting by another chord 2 notes down, in this case, a G. And the next part, where we were playing a G, we can go down 2 notes to E minor, which you may remember we said was actually a more fitting chord in this position anyway, due to the B and E notes in the melody. And then we can go from that E minor to the A that we were playing before. And this gives us a 2-5-1 progression, which is your staple of jazz music, from E to A back to D. So you normally don't want to substitute out your dominant chord, your A in this case, because if you move that chord down, you'll lose the dominant function or the leading from that chord back into your tonic. So yeah, normally the 5 chord is kept and not substituted out, particularly at the end of a phrase when you're leading back to the tonic. So let's try all of those changes together. So we've spiced up our accompaniment with some new chords. Now it's time to take it to the next level and turn it into an accompaniment of this specific tune rather than just chords for a D major reel. And the way we do that is by following the melody. So there isn't a whole lot of scope for this in the A part. You could just play the melody along with the chords. So like or you could harmonize with the melody. Something like that. But we're going to focus on the B part where we have this descending line, which gives us a lot of options for accompaniment. So you could of course play along with the melody as I just briefly showed in the A part. But another option is to follow the melodic downward progression with your chords. You could also do the opposite and do an ascending chord line. Or you could follow the descending pattern but juxtapose the rhythm in a more kind of call and response style. So let's have a look at some of those in the context of the melody. So what I threw in at the end there was playing the melody as a kind of echo, using that as a turnaround to get back into the start of the tune. So this is something that can be really effective when used in moderation. So not every time, but maybe just sort of once per round, going back from the B part to the A part. So there's an outline of some different techniques to accompany a D major reel. So if you've made it this far, you deserve some kind of reward. So now I'm going to show you the forbidden accompaniment that will probably get you kicked out of the session, but will make you feel like a jazz master while you're playing it. So I hope you enjoy.